Good morning, everyone. Today I will be presenting my research design project titled, Who is More Vulnerable to Political Misinformation Among African Americans? Political misinformation has become a major issue in our democracy because it affects voting behavior, trust in our government and institutions, public understanding of politics, and those are like really bad problems. So my project is focused on specifically African American communities, and it will be examining whether education level or social media use influences vulnerability to this misinformation. Okay. All right, so my research question asks, who is more vulnerable to political misinformation among African Americans? The topic is significant because misinformation can weaken democratic participation, as I stated in the first slide, and it reduces public trust. Although there's already research on misinformation, many studies treat African Americans as one broad category and not specifically examine the differences within the community itself. My study contributes to the literature by further examining education and media consumption patterns. And these patterns may shape the vulnerability and misinformation among African Americans, which is why it's important to further study it. My goal is to basically close the gap that we have regarding the source of the political misinformation. So my study is based on two main theories. Number one, the first theory is that lower education attainment may reduce political knowledge and critical thinking skills. This makes individuals much more susceptible and vulnerable to believing false political information. Number two is that people who rely heavily on social media are exposed to more misinformation because social media platforms spread information quickly, often without fact checking it or giving the proper sources, which is it's a good source to get tricked on, you know what I mean, because it spreads very fast. From these theories, I've developed the hypothesis that number one states that individuals with lower education attainment are more vulnerable to political misinformation, and number two, individuals who rely heavily on social media are also more vulnerable to political misinformation. Those are my two theories and two hypotheses. Okay, so here we have my primary research design. Let's see. My primary research design is a large and cross-sectional survey. The unit of analysis is African American adults 18 or older living in the U.S. The dependent variable is vulnerability to political misinformation. And the independent variables are education, attainment, and reliance on social media. The participants will complete a survey that includes demographic questions and 10 false political statements, throughout which their responses will be measured to see if they can correctly identify the misinformation. To analyze the data, I will use ordinal logistic regression while also controlling for variables like age, gender, and income. So now we're going to talk about my supplementary research design. And in addition to the survey, I will be completing and conducting a supplementary qualitative research design. This will involve interviewing about 8 participants selected from the previous survey responses. Participants will represent different education levels and different patterns of social media use. The interviews would be semi-structured over Zoom and would last from 25 to 30 minutes long. And the purpose of these interviews is to better understand why education and social media use influences vulnerability. Vulnerability to political misinformation, and how participants evaluate political information in their daily lives. Okay. In my conclusion, I just want to reiterate my research question and my goals, which is to examine who is more vulnerable to political misinformation among African Americans. I expect to find that lower educational attainment and heavier social media use results in an increase of vulnerability and misinformation. These findings could have external validity, as they could apply to other demographics and other racial groups beyond African Americans. And my future research could compare racial groups directly and further explore how different social media platforms contribute to misinformation and exposure. How can Instagram compare to TikTok in the misinformation? Thank you all for listening to my presentation. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you guys today, but I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen and see what I've been working on for the past semester. Thank you guys so much.